We have to do a better job. But if people think that this is a inner city problem, this is growing and growing and growing, and we're seeing it. And if you've got suburban communities that are having the ability to think it's okay that they put up a flyer in a black church, and the reason they don't have any people who are police officers who are African American because not enough African Americans read the flyer, we've got problems that are bigger than we even realize.
Okay, we have a number of questions. I think we've got one at the back that's been trying for some time, and then you'll be next.
I just wanted to say, I've been doing a lot of argumentation, debate work, and one of our topics is body cameras, and I wanted to know what you guys' opinions are on that, and if you think they're effective.
Are body cameras going to solve this?
No. No, because the city is not going to release the video of the body camera. They set precedent when the first incident that they captured on body camera and said you can't see it. And basically what they're saying, give us time to make up our excuse. If you give them enough time, they'll make up an excuse for anything. But they did not release, if the body camera, but because then they'll say, well, it's an ongoing investigation, so we can't release the tape of the body camera. Now they said we will at some point. Will they? I think they've set precedent that, and then body cameras can be turned off. I think what you'll find is that in confrontational situations, oh, my body camera wasn't working. There's no sanction for that. There's nothing written. Right, in New Orleans, they kept getting turned off. But the Department of Justice really cleaned house in New Orleans. And you know how many cop-related killings they had in New Orleans last year? 1. Los Angeles, they did the same thing. Los Angeles Police Department is now 66% minority in women, mainly Hispanics and women, a lot more women. You have to have, the police has to reflect the population that they're serving and protecting, and things like body cameras and all that does is catch after the person is dead. That's like closing the barn door after the horse is gone. And now, only times it comes into play is after something has been committed. And I'll go back to my point that whenever the confrontation, when police brutality goes down, so does crime.
Question here? Yes.
I was just going to ask Mr. Simpson, what kind of vetting process do they have with the police? Because from my understanding, the policeman that killed Tamara Rice had some issues.
So the question was, what kind of vetting policies does the city of Cleveland have with regard to the officer who was involved in the shooting that took Tamara Rice's life?
I'm talking about the general.
And to be specific, for people who didn't know, he had been, I believe, released or fired from the Independence Police Department because when he was involved in the shooting range, he had become very emotional, and people felt that to be an indication of him not needing to be at Independence. What came out of that was that the city of Cleveland didn't request his file, and that he was hired by the Cleveland Police without having been vetted. I will tell you that the chief of police changed the policy that day, but I think that there is a real question mark from a lot of people about how that whole thing occurred.
And his father was a cop.
No, that's...
Well, it's a legacy. Yeah, oftentimes it's a legacy. If your father was a cop, his father was a police officer in New York for 20 years. He was then United States Marshal. So he said, hey, my son, Timmy, needs a job. Oh, well, that's so-and-so's son. We got to give him a badge and a gun. We don't care if he's batshit crazy. He still deserves a badge and a gun.
I have a question for Councilman Simpleman. According to Plain Dealer, when dispatch told the officer responding to your Rice shooting that the person who reported had a gun and was a young person, they did not tell him that it might have been a fake gun and the young person might have been only a child. Why wasn't that information reported to responding police officers?
I don't know. I can tell you that when I heard the call of the person who called who said, it is a young person, it may not be a real gun, those two things were never indicated to the police. What the police department has said to us is that they, in order for the officer's life not to be in danger, they did not indicate whether or not it was a real gun or not. And the only way they would have known that would have been if had they been there. I can tell you, I know that park very well. There are a lot of ways to enter that park, and the whole situation is obviously under review, but the way that that was transmitted is something that a lot of people have questions about as well.
The other part of that question is, you have a 12-year-old boy who's carrying a gun, waving it around, and somebody felt unsecure enough that they called police to report that somebody's waving a gun around. Why would a 12-year-old boy be carrying a gun that looked like a real one, where the orange cap had been removed to show that it was not a real gun? There's probably more.
No, that's a deep question, and I'm going to try to answer it.
Did people hear the question?
The question was why was a 12-year-old boy walking around with something that looked like a gun?
Right.
Wasn't he as big as an adult, though?
I grew up, I'm just going to say this to you guys. I grew up on East 74th Street in St. Clair. Our family was the second last Eastern European family, and we lived there until my dad and mom died. When I came here to John Carroll, I felt like an alien. If you knew what East 74th Street and Corman was like in the 80s and 90s, and you came to University Heights, you would feel weird too. The fact that he was 6'2" or whatever, something was fundamentally not working appropriately in that whole situation, which is what I was getting to in the beginning, which people roll their eyes when I talk about health disparities. But, you know, in the ward that I represent, we've got some intense pockets of poverty, and the first thing we do in the summertime is to figure out how to get things going in that park. Get things going like kids engaging with each other, getting mentorship programs going, trying to figure out how to engage the faith-based community. I can tell you that in neighborhoods like Ohio City and Tremont, that everyone thinks are really she right now, and they are. They're very well-to-do. There were a lot of things that we did fundamentally to try to figure out how to engage young people in those parks. Places like Cleveland Public Theater does a great job of it, and they try to help these kids from all over the city. I'm not going to weigh in at all about whether or not kids who are 12 should be carrying things that look like guns. You know, we had a situation in Cleveland last week where a 3-year-old killed a 1-year-old with a real gun. We have a problem in this country with guns. We have a problem in this country with politics where if I say that I'm pro-choice or pro-life, I'm now getting mail at my house with the name and address of physicians who provide abortion services. Right? Something has snapped where there is no gray line. And you know, you should see the calls I got from folks on the gun control lobby, or the gun lobby, because I voted the way I did with a piece of legislation that is all intents and purposes rectifying to what the state of Ohio has. Right? We can't even agree on the 2% that we probably agree on for fear of being considered that we're giving ground. And I would give up my political career if Tamir Rice were alive today. I think all of us would. That to see a 12-year-old boy die like that is something that you can't stomach. If you have kids, you know what I'm talking about. But if we think that it starts and ends in that black and white cruiser, we're kidding ourselves. You know, the stuff that you read, forgive me, Riley, but the stuff that you guys allow to be put on Northeast Ohio Media Group, and I know it's not your decision.
Comments.
The comments are disgusting. Contribute to this hatred in the city. Have the guts and sign your name to it. I get called an a-hole every day by people who sign their name to it. You know what? Thank you for having the courage to say it. But it's this fomenting of the corners, of the shadows, that absolutely contributes nothing to our country being what it's supposed to be. And I'm not casting blame, it's just interesting how the perception of what is and what isn't is out there. And I wasn't there that fateful day in Cudell, but I can tell you honestly that I think everyone wishes to God we could go back in time. So,
Could I, one of the things that's gotten twisted, he did not have the gun in his hand. The gun was in his waistband. So how did the cop know that it didn't have the plug in the end of it? When he saw the cop, he started reaching for it, maybe to give it to the cop. He did not have it in his hand. He didn't have a chance to have it in his hand. But the story now, when Steve Loomis is running around the city with toy guns and real guns, you can't tell the difference. Well, but he never had his hand on the gun when he got shot.
It was in his pocket, wasn't it?
No, it was in his waistband. And it's clear it was in his waistband. Now, why did a 12-year-old wave a gun around the park? Because 12-year-olds do stupid things. But it was real easy to solve. Two things, it was a perfect storm of failure. One, he should have known who the kid was and called him out by name. Two, stop the car. You don't pull up if you suspect that it's a dangerous situation. You keep your car back, open the door, go on your loudspeaker, and say, hey, you, drop the gun. Why didn't they follow procedure? So now what they want to do is turn and blame the victim, and they're very good at that. Well, he caused his own death because he had this gun. So the cop had no choice. You know, one officer, and the one that kicked the guy in the head, he jumped in front of a moving car and then shot, said, I had to because my life was in danger. No, you didn't have to jump in front of a moving car. But those are the kind of constructs that they set up to give them a chance to act on their cowboy fantasies. And that's exactly what a lot of it is.
I've got a bunch of people.
Oh.
Did you want to say something, Chris?
Yes, just real quick.
Right.
I'm an intern at the Summit County Juvenile Court now. I'm there every morning at 6:30, and I deal with kids every day that've been arrested. And you would be blown away by how many kids come in with fake gun charges. And we're here talking about how the police are an issue and stuff, but we're not going to deny the fact that in our communities there's issues. We have issues from the music we listen to what we're pumped into our heads daily, to what our role models, who our role models are. So that stuff is preceded. When I was growing up, where I grew up, I had a BB gun or a cap gun or something on me all the time. We're playing cops and robbers, and it's very common to have a gun or a fake gun and run around outside shooting at each other, whether it be laser tag or whether it be BB guns that didn't have BBs or airsoft guns. So it's there's just an airsoft scandal in the news last week. So it's very common, and I think exactly what Mansfield said. It's an issue with, young kids do stupid things, and we're expecting that older police officer to make a better decision in that situation.
One more thing. 5 guns, airsoft guns, were taken from kids that same week that Tamir got killed. 5 other kids, they took airsoft guns from them. The police did. They didn't kill any of them.
Did they have the front part?
Yes.
They did?
Yes. 5 other guns. The kids take them out because they want people to think it's a real gun. And they do it for self-protection in dangerous neighborhoods. But 5 other guns were taken from kids that same week. Nobody else was killed.
Okay, I have, Kyle has been waiting, Bill Sowers has been waiting, Ashley and John Eagle. So I think in that order, but I'm not totally sure, okay?
So, first of all, you shouldn't play with BB guns, you'll shoot your eye out.
Good movie.
A lot of things have been, flowing through here, whether that be questions, I think he might have left by now, but, for media coverage, we all kind of know media coverage sways public opinion, and it's hard to say that, when making it sound one way is going to definitely sway the public opinion. Yes, something like an apology is nice, but the coverage like that doesn't really outweigh everything else that gets printed on the other side. So obviously he's not here to hear that, but and I have a similar story to you, a similar experience. So that's for another time or after. So
Kyle is another one of those Hispanic guys who
Yes.
looks like a white guy.
Half Puerto Rican, half Irish.
Great.
Interesting little combo. But and then we also got into something about cops being tattooed. To me that sounds just like a gang. And I've heard that a lot before. That cops banding together, having the code, things like that. It's just like a gang. It's just a group of people doing wrong things and then covering for each other or something similar. And a tattoo just exemplifies that, if not more. And then to go into my main question, and you talking about police wearing the cameras, you said that's something that you don't believe that can, fix the problem that we have. And to me, that seems like an external issue. You have a camera, you're doing your videotaping their actions. So what about if we got more internal, and maybe to like the root of the problem of their decision making and their thought process, or even the deception when you're lying on a police report, or even something is saying that they noticed an emotional difference when the Tamir Rice shooter was shooting his gun at the range. Something like that would be picked up by, let's say, a counselor or something like that. So saying that if a mandatory police counseling was enacted, that we can kind of maybe prevent violence or see kind of tracks of their mind state is going down a different road. If they do have a stressful job, normal people with stress, get counseling and do those type of things to, let that out and express it in a non-violent way. So you think that something like a mandatory counseling or something along those lines would be helpful for police, around the nation?
Well, I think hiring a friend of mine, she was.
An external source, as you said.
Well,
something outside of the police.
I think first you have to do a better job of selecting who you give a badge and a gun to. And I had a friend, she was a police sergeant. This was almost 15 years ago. She was an African American woman. Her job was to be the recruiter of minorities. She said, I don't have a budget, I don't have a car, I'm not allowed to go to college campuses, I'm not allowed to go to the military and get African Americans that are coming out of the military. So basically it's a joke. The problem is it's who we solicit and give a badge and gun to. That's why I'm saying more women. All of the things you're talking about is like fixing a broken officer. Now, like any other profession, it can be stressful, and maybe you need to, after so many years on the front line, you need to move to a senior position where you're not on the street. Jim Simone, they couldn't get him off the street. Nor the cop wanted to serve with him because everybody knew he was nuts. But he loved being out there for the excitement. And there's the real key has to be accountability. And right now, but the media really is changing that. But it's coming through the Department of Justice. That once you start making the commanding officer accountable for what he didn't do to correct the officers under him and own up the line, it really comes down to accountability. The cops are still of the mindset, I can do whatever I want and we're going to figure out a way to get you around it. We're going to circle the wagons. There will never be any punishment. There has to be accountability for bad behavior. It's the only profession that there's no accountability. If you're a doctor and you commit malpractice, you can get sued. You can lose your license. Rarely in America. And only when the camera is rolling, and then it's thing like, don't believe what you saw, just believe what we tell you. So I don't think correcting bad cops is the solution.
Well, I mean, just to comment further on that. So maybe I worded it right in saying that